Brother, I've a faint suspicion you and I've been led astray, taught to drive the devil from us. We've invited him to stay. What we need is light, for we can't drive out the darkness with a stick. With a stick, no, we can't drive out the devil with a stick. Some proclaim all men are sinners, can't escape the devil's might. How their interests must intrigue him, they won't keep him out of sight. What we need is light, for we can't drive out the darkness, talking sin, no, we can't drive out the devil talking sin. Some of us were taught the slogan, social evils must be slain. But can anger drive out sorrow? How can passion conquer pain? What we need is light, for we can't drive out the darkness when we hate, no, we can't drive out the devil when we hate. Brother, have you ever wondered why the darkness lingers on? If we want to see the sunrise, let us turn and face the dawn. What we need is light, for we'll only best the darkness when we love, yes, we'll only best the devil when we love.
Reading is taken from Rays of the One Light, Weekly Commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. Week 33. Does Satan exist? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. The Bible tells us in chapter 4 of the Gospel of St. Matthew, then, after baptism, was Jesus led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. To most modern minds, this passage seems quaintly obsolete. Psychologists would say, have said in fact, that the temptation of Jesus, if it occurred at all, was purely psychological. They call it a projection of desires lurking in his own subconscious mind. The subconscious plays a strong part, certainly, even if not a unique one, in any testing the spiritual seeker must undergo. The Bhagavad Gita, in dealing with this undeniable reality, quotes Arjuna in the 3rd chapter, and then Sri Krishna's reply. Yet tell me, teacher, said Arjuna, by what force doth man go to his ill, unwilling, as if one pushed him in that path? Krishna replied, desire it is, passion it is, born of the darknesses, which pusheth him. Mighty of appetite, sinful and strong is this, man's enemy. Yet even Krishna describes passion as born of the darknesses. The fact is, as Paramhansa Yogananda wrote in Autobiography of a Yogi, all thoughts vibrate eternally in the cosmos. Thoughts are universally and not individually rooted. A truth cannot be created, but only perceived. Psychology, yes, but psychology attuned to currents of consciousness that pervade the entire universe, attracted by each of us according to our own personal inclinations. Yogananda, quoted in The Path, said, I used to think Satan was only a human invention, but now I know, and add my testimony to that of others who lived before me, that Satan is a reality. He is a universal, conscious force whose sole aim is to keep all beings bound to the wheel of delusion. We should take pains, then, to attract uplifting currents of universal consciousness and to avoid attracting the negative, which, disease that it is, can infect our thoughts, even while it leads us to believe that our thoughts are purely our own. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Oh.
Is giving me lots of trouble. Oh, my Lord. Good morning, everybody. How is everyone? Oh, good. It's nice to be here together. We've been gone for a few weeks, and it was quite an adventure. We had some great fun. I was down for the Builders Week at Ananda Village, where a group of people came together to help in the manifestation of this temple of light that's being built. After 50 years, Ananda Village is finally getting a temple of their own. And it's way, way, way past due, but its delay is due to the generosity of spirit that pervades Ananda. Ananda Village is where Ananda began. It's where Swami Kriyananda lived and drew to him those who were looking for a deep experience of God's presence in their lives and were willing to do the yoga practices that made that possible. And Ananda Village, when I and my family arrived, was about 300 people or so in this little 800-900 acres in the Sierra foothills. And of course, the next few years, it grew to be about 500-600 people, and there were 80 kids. We had a little 2-year-old when we arrived, and there were about 80 kids that were kind of in that age range, and it was a booming thing. And building was going on apace, and lots of development and everything. And then Swami said, "Gosh, we should start other communities." And I think the next one out, there were little ashrams that started, little living centers that started in various cities. But then Assisi, Italy, or Ananda, Italy, Ananda Europa started up in northern Italy and then moved to Assisi. And a bunch of people went. They disappeared from the village. And then Palo Alto became a community, and a bunch of people left then, and then Seattle became a community, and Portland became a community. Constantly people went out to share what was being experienced and found at Ananda Village. And it was a time of great self-offering, both to be at the village, because it was not easy, and also to go just wherever there was need and hunger and receptivity to the teachings of Ananda. And then, Ananda, India started, and more people left, and more money and funds and resources got diverted. And so Ananda Village has been this source of incredible spiritual wealth for the world, but the cost of that has been they have not developed internally their own infrastructure, and their own needs have been neglected to a large degree across these years. And finally, the time has come. It's appropriate now. All the different parts of Ananda around the world are doing well on their own rights, and we're coming back together now to put a temple of light onto this beautiful sacred property. And the temple is being built large enough to hold up to 500 people. And it was a real privilege because building a temple. We used to have, I became a builder when I moved to Ananda, and we had the Temple of the Year Club. And we would commit to building at least one temple a year to hold the light of God in this world. And a lot of us original builders, there were 12 original partners in the Builders Guild. And many of us came back together for this work week. We're not quite as nimble as we were before. We're not quite as agile, but we are equally dedicated and willing to show up. And a lot happened. There were about 80 people that worked on the building, 80 to 100 people that worked on the building through the course of that week. And what was really fun was the sharing of that. We'll probably never come together in this life again like that. But there was a little magic in it, because a lot of the offspring of these builders, the progeny, were also there building. And many of them are actually on the payroll as builders for this Temple of Light. And so you saw a lot of father-son, or in our case, father-daughter teams working together. Now, my daughter is not on the payroll for this project, but certainly from the energy she put out, she could be if she wasn't doing other things. So it was just a real clear message of the power of generosity. That when we are generous from our own hearts with sincerity, ripples of goodness go out and affect the entire world. You know, the movement. Ananda now serves people in virtually every single country, in every single language around the globe. Those who seek joy, who seek upliftment, who seek meaning in life, have something they can turn to. We don't have centers in every country, but we have the World Wide Web, we have the internet, and through that. But then we also, increasingly, Ananda, the light of God through these masters, these self-realization masters, through Swami Kriyananda, through Ananda, is beginning to affect the world. And one of the things that's happening right now, and this is, again, another moment of generosity. A woman in India, by the way, this is the power of ones. There was a meditation class given, and I'm not going to get the numbers exactly right, but it's going to be close. And virtually one person showed up for this class. And the instructor, Diana, did not cancel the class, although she could have. There wasn't enough energy, but she didn't. And the woman stayed and was very touched by these teachings and by what Diana shared. And they went out to lunch afterwards, and they became friends. And the woman started coming and coming and coming and getting more and more involved. Turns out that she is the scion, she's the daughter of one of the wealthiest families in all of India, the DLF family. And she has facilitated an enormous amount of the growth of Ananda in India. And her family, her father was very dismissive. They're a development company, a land development company family. And he's, very much involved in the world of that, and had not a lot of interest and energy for the spiritual world. But his wife passed recently. And with that has come kind of a sea change. He did some introspecting and asking deeper questions. And his own life is passing also. He's not on his deathbed, but you can look back and kind of see the story of your life and where the train you're on is heading and the values of it. And he said, I've done everything in this world that I've ever wanted except give back, except share. And so they are starting a foundation, an institute. And it was going to be leadership. But they own this really priceless, literally priceless, piece of land in New Delhi. And it has a temple on it. And they started thinking, well, you can't put the culture wouldn't accept it, a leadership school on a temple grounds. So then, and Pia's been talking with them in the background. She's holding the spiritual aspect of this, the center of this. It's going to be the Indira Institute, or the Indira and J.P. Singh Institute. They've decided to make it an institute of higher consciousness. Isn't that beautiful? Do you recall, if you know these teachings at all, Yogananda said when he wrote his commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita, he said, millions will find God through this book. I know, I have seen it. Well, what's happening is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, those teachings are going to become the very central thread for this institute. And they have hired the administrator and developer of the second largest university in India. This man has got ties into Harvard and Yale and all of the Ivy League colleges. I mean, this is very high echelon group of people that are putting this institute together, and it's unfolding even as we speak. Probably within the next 6 months or a year, programs will start to be offered, but it'll all be coming off of the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. So we're watching generosity and generosity beginning to affect and change the world. Now I want to talk for a moment, tell a little story, because the topic is about Satan. Does Satan exist? Yes. Satan is the force. Yogananda said that when God first manifested the world, the universe creation, he put out, it's the nature. Swami Kriyananda says, the why of it, well, we can wait till we achieve absolute liberation and ask the question, or we can listen to the masters, and Swami said, it's the nature of joy to want to share itself. Isn't that beautiful? And that God, being all joy, all love, wants to share itself. It's the same as above, so below. It's the same reason we dream. We don't need to dream, but we do. We want to have the adventure of sharing what's going on inside. And we got nothing to share with, and God had nothing to share with, so he manifested creation. And it's said that he manifested creation, vibrated, and this wonderful dream of creation happened. And as soon as he stopped putting out energy, everything just became still, meditated, and resolved back. It was a little like opening a book. Once upon a time, the end. It's a fairly dissatisfying read. And so he put out more energy, but as long as he put out energy, the dream continued. But the second he stopped, it folded it up on itself and resolved back into joy, resolved back into wholeness and harmony. I said, well, that wasn't satisfying either. So the next time, Master says, he put out a force into the dream that made everything look different than it is, and made it look like what we're looking for would only be found outwardly, when in fact it can only be found inwardly. And that force is called Satan. It's called Maya in the East. But it's the illusion. It's the vision that things are different than they are. And that force's job, its single job, is to keep the dream going, to keep you engaged. And it can use allurement, it can use fear, it can use anything that your psychology responds to keep the game going. Now I'm going to tell a story about a man who became one of the greatest saints of all time in India, but many thousands of years ago. He grew up in a little ashram. He grew up in a fairly benign way, very innocent. His name was, and I'm going to get this, Ratnakara. Now, Ratnakara, he grew up, he got married. Things were fine so far. This is right about the time of Sat Yuga down into Treta Yuga, so things were changing. And he started to have children, which is pretty typical in the story of life. And what happened was, as his family expanded, his capacity to earn diminished. And he wasn't able to provide for his family. And one of the desires of the heart that has been woven in is the desire to care for that for which we're responsible. So he turned to what? He turned to highway robbery. And at first it was very small, then gradually it became increasingly compelling to where, as a highwayman, he was very good at what he did. He became very successful. But in this particular area, if you wandered those roads, you were likely to get accosted by Ratnakara. And he would demand of you everything you had. And if you didn't have, or if you didn't give, he would kill you. And one day, Narada, the divine messenger, was walking along, and he was warned not to go down this road. He says, I'm not too worried about it. I'll be okay. So sure enough, he's walking down this forest path, and who should appear before him but Ratnakara. And Ratnakara fiercely demanded of Narada everything he had. And Narada looked at his rags and tatters. He looked at his little instrument, and he said, "This is all I have. you may have it if you'd like. Ratnakara says, that's not enough. If you don't give me more, I will kill you. And Narada said, well, if that's what you feel you need to do, I guess that's what you need to do. But he had no fear in his heart. And he said to him, and he looked him in the eyes and he said, I have a question for you, though, before you kill me. He said, why do you do the things that you do? Ratnakara said, because I have a family to feed and I must feed them and care for them. Ratnakara said, and Narada said, you know that what you do is bringing you very, very bad karma. And there's a huge price that you'll pay for the kinds of behaviors that you're doing. This is in India, so people understand karma, that what you put out is what you get back. And he says, yes, but my family, they benefit from this, they will share in my suffering. And Narada said, would you go and check that out? Are you sure? Go and check this out. And he said, I'll wait right here. You can even bind me to the tree and I'll wait here. And if you find that it's true, you can come back and kill me. You can finish the job. Ratnakara said, well, I can't let you go because if I do, it'll ruin my reputation as a highwayman. But if you promise, and I'll tie you here. And he went back and he went to his parents. And he said to them, I care for you. You know how I make my money to be able to provide. And they said, well, we don't care how you make your money. Your job is to provide as the son of this family. We cared for you. We raised you. You are responsible for us. And he said, you know that I'm a highwayman and I will get very bad karma. And they said, that karma has nothing to do with us. How you choose to support us is up to you. He went to his wife. He went to his children. He said, you know that I care for you very well, but that I care for you in this way. And they said, we don't care. We don't care how you do it. Your job is to do it. We're grateful that you do it, but we will not share in any suffering because that's your choice. And he went back to Narada and he said, you're right. I'm doing all of this in service to people who don't care enough to share with me the consequences of what it is that's bringing them the benefit. He says, and it doesn't bring me happiness, it brings me great sorrow. It brings me great pain to do these things. I will not do this anymore. But I do not know the way out because everything we do builds habits in our minds and our heart, and it creates a whole life. He said, I don't know how to get out of this. Narada said, I want you to do something. Very quickly, your life will change. He said, if you can put down that other life, and Ratnakara said, I'm done with that way of life. I will never go back to that family. I want freedom from this. He said, okay, I want you to come. I want you to give away all you have. I want you to become a forest hermit, and I want you to repeat the name of Rama. There's a very high vibration in that. And Ratnakara said, okay, and he tried, but he couldn't. His life had become so dark, he couldn't say the word Rama. And so Narada was very wise. He said, well, can you say Mara? Because Mara is the name of Satan. Mara is the name of the devil, of the evil. And Ratnakara was quite able to say that. He said, okay, I just want you to repeat this over and over and over. And so Ratnakara started, and they say that he went and sat in the forest and started this, and it was Mara, 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 with deeper and deeper concentration. Mara, 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 Rama, Rama. And it changed gradually the deeper he went, and the more he offered himself into, the more it changed from Mara into Rama by itself. And it says that he meditated for a very long time. In fact, so long a time that around him grew up an anthill. But that he was so absorbed in the mantra, in the vibration of God's presence, that he never even noticed. And finally, he became so light that it was time to put down his mantra, put down his effort. And he stood up, and he became known as Valmiki, which means anthill. But he became one of the most beloved saints of all time, and he wrote the Ramayana, which is one of the two epics from India. The way out of delusion, the way out of these things, often we're not able to just turn our minds toward the light, but we do what we can. We start to put down the habits. We put ourselves in a different environment. And then we do what we can with what we have. As long as we keep our hearts open, our minds uplifted, and our focus toward the aspiration of oneness with God, oneness with joy, oneness with love, it magically starts to transform. And if the best we can do is to meditate on Satan at the beginning, if our minds are uplifted and our hearts are open, if we are in purification, which we do every week, if we're offering ourselves in purification, what happens is it gradually turns into the light. Now there's one last story I'd like to tell. And it's generosity works more than one way. We not only have to be generous in our own nature, but we have to be in a flow of exchange that is generous. There's a story, it's apocryphal because I don't have a way to validate it. I don't have a way to document it. But it's said that the man, I think it's the fellow who did, it was an American artist, and I think it's the fellow who did American Gothic. Yeah, I think it was Grant Wood, but I'm not sure if that was who it is. But anyway, this American artist, when he was starting off in art, he had a very, very hard time of it. And he was very, very poor. And he was so dedicated to his art that he continued, but it was only by the grace of a friend of his, the generosity of a friend of his, that he was able to sustain. And gradually, his art refined itself. Gradually, people began to see it, and he became very wealthy and very prosperous in his chosen occupation. And after some period of time, it was his friend's birthday, many, many years, and he said to him, for your birthday this year, in gratitude for all that you made possible in my life, I would like to give to you the gift of any painting, any piece of art that I've ever done. Come to my studio and pick the one that is dearest to your heart. And it'll be my greatest joy to give this to you. And so the day came, and the man came to the studio, and he walked through, and it was just full of beauty. And then he left, but he didn't speak to the artist. He went home, and the artist wondered what had happened, and he went to him, and he found him in his home crying. And he said, "My friend, what's wrong?" He said, "Did you not find anything you liked? Is there nothing that I can give you as a gift?" He said, "Oh, I found many things, and I found one in particular that really touches me. But I came home, and there's no room in my home. There's no place for it." And this artist was a very wise man, very sage, and he said, "I have an idea, if you're willing to go along with it." And what they did was they took the home and they emptied everything out. And then they freshened the home, and then they went and got that piece of art. And they brought it in. And he said, "Where would you want to put it?" And they put it in the most beautiful place, in the most prestigious place. And then they went back outside, and they brought in the rest of the goods and put things in where they would fit. And the teaching in this, the message in this, the gift in this is a very powerful one for those that would seek God, because many of us have the issue that we would love the gift that God would give us, the gift of enlightenment, the gift of inner joy and freedom. But there's no place for it in our lives. Our lives are so full with activities and commitments and involvements that we have no way to find our way to place that beautiful gift that God would give us. There's no room in the home. And so what we have to do is we have to open our hearts. If we want to get past illusion, if we really want to find the things that we seek, the gifts that God would give us, if we want to get past the satanic pull of self-involvement, we have to accept the graciousness and the giving of God by emptying out our home of our heart and our lives. And then bring in the teachings, bring in the blessings of God and the great ones, and put them at the very most precious place in our lives. And then bring the rest of the things back in that will fit. And then we have a life that's centered, and the greatest feature in it will be that greatest gift that God can give us. Let's end with a reading. This is number 80 from Whispers from Eternity, Yogananda's book of prayer demands and poems. And this is demand to be freed from self-created evil habits and temptations. And the self-created part, Satan is universal, but it's our magnetism, our commitments. It's the commitments to the things that are already in the house and the desires that we think will bring us happiness that take us farther away. They cause the distance in each one of our lives from the light of God. Teach me, O Spirit, to distinguish between my soul's lasting happiness and the temporary pleasures of the senses, touch, taste, smell, sight, and hearing. Strengthen my willpower. Teach me not to be enslaved by bad habits. Teach me to be guided only by good habits, formed by good company and meditation. Teach me above all to be guided by thy wisdom. Teach me to shun evil by right judgment and discrimination, and teach me willingly to adopt all good ways, influenced only by inner freedom and not compelled to evil by hardened habits. Om. Peace. Amen.
It's actually a chant by Yogananda. It's in Cosmic Chants. It's When My Dreams Dream Is Done. And I want to thank David for coming as a special guest.
Welcome, David.
I believe he's still on vacation.